Hello everyone, greetings from Hobart. I'm afraid I can't attend this session live. It's after 4 a.m. in Australia and my brain doesn't really function, or rather functions even worse than normal at that time of day. So hopefully this video will still be a useful contribution. I'd like to start by thanking Michael Kloderhammer for organising this session and Paul de Gay, of course, for his presentation. We all hope that we'll be able to make some small contribution to the publishing success of RC17 members, and indeed anyone else interested in the sociology of organisations. There are lots of different topics we could cover in this session, like putting together a book proposal, converting your thesis to a book, and so on. But what I'd like to focus on here is writing for a journal. I think Paul has already talked about that, and hopefully my observations will build on his and not duplicate them too much. A core issue is that of somehow coordinating the writing of your article with the journal that you want to place it in. So it's not a matter of writing it and then looking for a journal, but to actually think about the two things at the same time. I think Paul's already spoken about the importance of being familiar with the journal style, ethos, and intellectual centre of gravity, and that needs to inform how you frame your argument, the type of theory and research that you engage with, and so on. Now, one possible model is to place your piece as a development of a debate that's gone on in the journal in the past. This could mean the introduction of an entirely new perspective or connection with a hitherto undiscussed body of literature, way of thinking, theorist, and so on. Remember, it's really important to have an answer to the so what question. Why is this important? Why does it matter? Why is it of significance to the readers of this journal? For me, it's usually only a weak claim to say the topic hasn't been covered before. You need to explain, in my view, why it should be, what difference it makes. Now, it's also worth knowing about the practical mechanics of how article submissions get assessed, and I'll draw on my experience of doing that for the Journal of Sociology as an associate editor. Mostly your paper will come to an associate editor whose job it is to find reviewers, and usually there's 3 of them. Now, it's a very good thing to make the life of this person as easy as possible. The first step they'll usually take in finding reviewers, because it's kind of built into the software that gets used, is to do a search on keywords. So it helps if you choose your keywords carefully. See if you can align them with the keywords of articles previously published in that journal, because that will be a possible guide to who your reviewers are likely to be. Usually when we choose keywords, we want them to reflect the content of what we've written as accurately as possible. But again, it's a matter of aligning and coordinating that with the journal that you're trying to place your piece in. Now, for the associate editor, if that fails, and it often does in my experience, the next step is to look through your bibliography to see if anyone in particular stands out as a plausible reviewer. That's what an associate editor will usually look at next. This means you need to think about the material and people you cite in those terms, and refer to other leading scholars in your field in a way that takes into account the possibility that they might end up reviewing your paper. The overall aim then is to write your article as part of a conversation with your reader, with a particular focus on possible reviewers as readers. So if you want to make particular use of a given theorist, say Foucault, you need to think about who the experts on Foucault are in relation more or less to your topic, and write as if you're conversing with them or speaking with them in the same room. For example, if you wanted to say something about bureaucracy, you'd write it with a view to Paul being a possible reviewer. It's good to know how to, I can't think of the right word, copy or mimic, right? To learn how to write by paying attention to the writing style of other articles in the journal. Work out what type of rhetorical style works best in that journal. That doesn't mean slavishly copying. You need to develop your own voice, but the point is to become conscious of that voice, of your own writing style, and learn how to adjust it, having observed how other people write. Now, another issue, once the referees have been assigned and so on, is to deal with their comments. If it's been accepted, perhaps with minor changes, all good. You can celebrate. If it's been rejected, don't argue about it. Just go to another journal. If it's revised and resubmit, and that's usually the most common outcome, one position that I've heard people argue for is just to move on to another journal until it's accepted, and that's one thing you could do. Another is to respond to the reviewer's comments, and that's usually what I do myself. Now, there are a number of things about that here. There are, in fact, basically two types of reviewers: those that have read your piece carefully and thoroughly, responsive to what you're trying to do, with genuine suggestions as to how to make your piece publishable. And then there's all the others. A lot of them will only respond to it in terms of the article that they would have written if they had addressed that topic, and don't really engage with what you've done. And it's almost impossible to respond to that sensibly. So I guess you need to make a choice in terms of how you think the reviewer has read your piece and how thoughtful it's been, and base your decision about what you do, like whether you just go to another journal on that basis. I know that's happened to me once with the American Sociological Review. I found the reviewer's comments so out of tune with what I'd actually done that I didn't see any point trying to engage in any kind of dialogue with them. But then in relation to the first type of reviewer, you need to be a good listener. And when I've talked to any of my colleagues about the experience they've had, often what I found or what I've noticed is that kind of listening capacity could be improved, that they're kind of caught up with what they want to do and haven't really absorbed what the reviewer is trying to say. So it's really important to try and grasp what it is they're saying about your piece. So this can be difficult because one identifies closely with one's own writing, but it's important to develop some detachment from it. You need to be able to rework your own writing. Think like an editor, as if you're correcting someone else's work. So it's a problem if you have become too attached to your own words, to your own writing. You need to be able to say what you want to say in a variety of ways. And often it's that shift in wording or framing that's what's needed to respond to a referee's comments. If you disagree with the reviewer's comments, just say so in your response to the editor. Argue your case. Often the editor will be entirely receptive to the idea that a reviewer got something wrong, but you do need to give them something to go on. You need to give them a basis for assessing what you've done or haven't done in those terms. It's important, though, to write in a way that the reviewer could read and not be offended by. Be polite, be diplomatic, balance. Yes, that's correct in one sense, but not in this sense, which is why I've done it this way. Create the possibility for the reviewer to save face. Remember, they're likely to be assessing your resubmission. Make it sound like you've learned something from their observation and made XYZ changes on the basis of what you've learned. And they needn't be all that major and still have the desired effect. Okay, that's all I can think of at this stage. I'm sorry I can't actually be present in this session, since I suspect the most useful activity would be question answer, dealing with your particular issues. If you think this session has been at least of some use, we can run another one at the Melbourne World Congress next year and make it a more dynamic kind of interaction. In the meantime, I'll also look forward to reading all the compelling journal articles that are going to be written by RC17 members, perhaps eventually in a new journal that we're hoping we'll be able to establish in the near future. I hope you've enjoyed the forum and especially the RC17 sessions, and that we can meet up face-to-face at the World Congress. All the best.